I just want to welcome you all because you're standing on the precipice of a really important time in your life, right? So I want to say, like, welcome. X marks the spot on the map. And you're in a new phase having teenagers. It's a new phase of parenthood, and you can feel it. Whether it's like all of a sudden lots of stinky feet, rolling eyes, constant texting, you're starting to be aware that you are not their central planet anymore. Yes. And that's as it should be. But you are still deeply important. And I think parents often feel like, I can't find my footing. I don't feel as important to them anymore. I don't know how to set limits. I don't know. I can't even get the time to play with them anymore. They so much have their own life. And my husband put it so well when he was talking about one of our kids one day, which is like, he absolutely hates to be managed and he absolutely requires management. And I think that is the exact challenge of the teenage years is they're in a place where they don't want to be limited at all. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. I deeply believe in community. I think that parenting alone in our own silos is just really depressing and really not beneficial for our mental health as parents. And it doesn't give us access to the best information. Because when you are in a space where you are hearing real stories, you are able to learn not just from yourself and what you and your own kid are going through at that time, you're actually able to learn what other people are going through. And it makes you feel far less alone. And it also makes you learn at warp speed. And being ahead of our kids is really, really, really important. So I have been doing this for years where we are training to raise our kids and taking our jobs very seriously with a whole lot of fun. And that is how we roll over here. I never wanted to teach the teen class until I had been through it with my own teens who are now 15 and 17. And I wanted to understand teenagerhood before I tried to explain it to you guys. So I've got a good handle on it now. I've watched a lot of stuff go down and I'm going to share it with you. So that's me. And the first thing I want to tell you is you are feeling perhaps a little bit off center in this new phase of parenting. And there is a good reason for that. So I'm going to first just start talking about the three phases of parenting as I see it. So, first of all, from ages 0 to 5, you are in a stage of curating the world for your child. So, you're picking everything from the binky to the blanket to the preschool to, who's watching over them. You are picking the mattress they're sleeping on potentially to, what schools and all of that. Like you are really largely in control for many parents of this time. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but in large part, we are largely in control of what our children are experiencing. They are so completely dependent on us that they are not far from us or not far from someone that we have deemed capable of caring for them usually. And so that's those years. Then you sense that big transition into the school years, right? In the elementary years, where now from like, let's say kindergarten on up through the elementary school years, you are really in that phase of curating your child for the world. So what that means is helping them understand, yeah, you got a teacher you don't like. You didn't get invited to a friend's birthday party. How can I help you develop the skills to deal with that? And so we're no longer able to say, hey, you have to invite my kid to that birthday party, or at least we shouldn't be saying that because it's not actually beneficial for our kids' growth, right? Like they have to come in contact with the real world and begin building that flexibility and the skills that are required for that. Then we go into phase 3, which is where you guys currently are entering in or already find yourselves in right now. And phase 3 is we're no longer curating our child for the world. We're no longer curating the world for our child as we were in those very early years. Now we're actually helping our child curate the world for themselves and helping our child curate themselves for the world that they find themselves in and that they're choosing. So that is actually a fundamental shift. And what it means is that we are no longer in that driver's seat. And just like our teens are learning to drive, quite literally, they are learning to drive in their life. And just like we are no longer in that driver's seat, we are sitting next to them while they're driving. Think of yourself as the driving instructor. Yes, you can grab the wheel if you need to. You might even have an emergency brake of your own, but they are the ones making those decisions. So think about it as you hand them over the keys to the car, which I have been doing with my 17-year-old who's been driving us all around. You are really letting them take that responsibility. So before you do that, what do you want? You want training, okay? You want to be training them because the stakes are high during these years, really high. It is real world. So I want to just explain to you why it's so important to understand the skills that you need them to have and to understand your place. Because if you're trying to drive, they will kick you out of the car. If you're fully out of the car, you don't get to grab the wheel or the emergency brake. Okay? There is no more an option of you fully driving them. Yes. And that's really an important thing to understand. So, what we've done now in this TTP Teens edition is create a school for you for teenagerhood so you can get up to date very quickly. And it is a 3-month program, and I'm going to explain it to you today so you understand what we cover. And then I'm going to open up for questions if any of you have questions about that. So the first thing is you have 3 core words that I want to ask you to keep in mind during this time that are really important. And each of the months are devoted to these core concepts. Okay. So the first core concept is consent. The second is culture. And the third is choice. So let's talk about month 1, where we're going to be dealing with consent. First of all, I want to ask you all to consent to the changes that are afoot. Please don't see this as a sad time. Many parents are really scared about the teenage years. They are, kind of like, oh, I wish it wasn't. But then what we're doing is we're messaging to our teenagers like, this is a sad time. It's not. It's actually fantastic. This is what you've been doing this all for. And at the end, I'm also going to give you another mind flip that'll help you understand how to think about the teenage years that will hopefully get you excited because I really believe this is a time we should be deeply invested in our children and deeply excited for what they are bringing. So I ask you to please consent to this change because that will help set your mind in the right place. And by the way, there really is no other option. Like you could not consent, but it's still gonna happen. Okay. So the other thing is we have to consent to the new ways to stay connected. You can't stay connected to them in the old ways. They aren't interested. And so I'm going to show you and teach you over the course of this, like many different ways to connect with them. One of the things that's really fun that I'll give you right now is a woman told me a story. Gosh, it stayed in my brain like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or even longer, where it was like one of those pieces of advice that you get along the way that you're like, I'm going to tuck that in my heart. So I'm just going to share this with you and pass it on. She said to me, when her kids were teenagers, she made a coffee cake, right? Every few days. And she would sit in the kitchen at 11 o'clock at night eating the coffee cake every night. And I was like, why? She was like, because I want my kids to know those are my office hours. I'm in the kitchen. I'm ready for you. And 9 times out of 10, my kids would come home really late and I'd be like, hey, you want to sit down with me? And they'd be like, nah, I'm good. And they'd just walk right past me upstairs. But every once in a while, they'd come down and be like, got any coffee cake? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, definitely. And we would just stay there in that kitchen. And those were some of the most important moments. And I want to tell you, just like you guys know, those of you who have done regular transformation team project for your younger kids, you know that we talk about bedtime as being a really crucial hour for your children. So I'm going to break this to you right now. The crucial hour for your teenagers is approximately 11:59 p.m. Okay. That is the crucial hour where the portal time opens into their soul. So it's a bummer for us, especially because many of us are in those middle life years where we're like, I think going to sleep at 9:59 is a little late for me. So, you got to work that out. But I just want you to know that that is a crucial window of time. And we'll go more into that into the course. Another piece of this consent is if you think about your children like a little plant, right? And you think like when they were babies, they were like little seedlings. They like just popped up and sprouted. And they're really like movable. You can kind of be like, okay, we're going here, we're going there. They're really movable. And as they get in those elementary school years, they're kind of like more like, a shoot that's got a little bit of strength, but you can still easily train it on a vine. At this point, they are branches. Do you understand? They're still young branches. You can train them, you can prune them a little bit, but you can't just move them or they break. So you must move with consent. Even this morning, I'll give you a tiny example. I wasn't even planning to talk about this, but like literally just happened this morning. My younger son, so among the teenage set, for those of you who don't know this yet, caffeine is a badge of honor. Okay. It's like a big deal. And it, just in the same way, Starbucks and everything sort of blew up caffeine among adults and became a thing. It is a thing among teenagers, partially because they're staying up so late, they aren't getting the sleep that they need. And that's true. And that's biological. They can't actually go to bed that early. And school is not made for their biological clock. So during the week, they are often losing sleep at an alarming pace. The other thing is there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of status. They sell these caffeinated drinks at schools. We're talking yerba mates. Some kids are getting energy drinks. Some older classmen, upperclassmen are going to go get an energy drink off campus in the middle of the day. So depending on where you go to school, what your school looks like, just know that this is a thing in the water, okay? So my older son has really, that's been an issue. It's been a long-standing conversation. I'm really happy to say we're on the other side of it now, I think. Thankfully, I'm going to knock on some wood. But my younger son doesn't do the energy drinks, but every once in a while he'll do a yerba mate. So recently he went to school and he had gotten a yerba mate, which is a tea for those of you who don't know, but it's pretty high in caffeine. And he had taken it to school and he was running late and he was like, I'm going to grab the breakfast at school because there's a school breakfast. And we were like, okay, make sure you eat before you take this. And he was like, yeah, 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 yeah. Left the house. And I get a text an hour later that's like, I'm shaking. I can't focus. I have my physics test. I feel like shit. What the fuck? I'm like, mm-hmm. And he is like, I just had a muffin. I didn't have time. And I had the yerba mate and now I don't feel well. So first of all, kudos for like writing me and owning it because he knew that we were already on this, right? So nice moment there of like openness in the relationship. And I was like, how do you want to handle this? And so then when we got home later that day, I was like, hey, let's talk, let's make some rules, let's move forward on this. So he hasn't asked for it for a month. This morning, he asked for a yerba mate that was like left over, like long story, but like 2 months ago, we had bought two. He used that one. This one was still in the fridge. I forgot to throw it out. Oops. So he sees it. He's like, can I take this morning? And I'm like, mm. So I was like, no. And he is getting now really pissy. He's a tired, cranky teenager, was working out last night at midnight. And now it's, he's up 7 a.m. and he's going to school and he's super tired this morning. And I was like, no, I really don't think that's a good idea. And I can see that he's starting to like bulk up. Does that make sense? Like and he's like, blah, blah, blah. And immediately I'm like, okay, he's just going to wind up buying it at school from a friend. And I'm like, I don't want that. So I look at him and I say, hey, buddy, I want to talk to you about this. Do you disagree with my opinion? And he's like, yeah, I think I can totally have this. And I said, okay, great. So tell me why. And he's like, because I'm fine. And I was like, so help me with what happened last time. He's like, it's not going to happen because I already ate. And I was like, okay, that's true. You did already eat. And I was like, would you be willing to have half of it? And he's like, ugh. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to move forward here right now. So I really want to help you with this. And I want to come to a place where we agree. Now, why did I take an extra moment to do this? Because if he leaves the house under my rule, but doesn't consent to my rule, he's going to boomerang back with additional freedom that he chooses for himself on his own terms that are not going to be as beneficial. Okay. This is what I'm talking about, co-created consent. Okay. We wound up having a quick conversation. Ultimately, he agreed it did really genuinely make sense to only have half. He didn't want me to pour it at home. He wanted to take the can to school. I'm sure for reasons you can understand, because it just looks cooler. And we agreed on that. Now, I don't know what he's really going to do, but I will tell you that by the time he left the house, he was in a really good mood. I got a hug, and it was a consented co-creation. Does that make sense, you guys? So please do not just set rules that they totally don't agree with and think that, like, oh, they'll just get over it. They may. I'm not saying you need to keep them happy. There are going to be times you set rules they're absolutely not okay with. But understand this, if they don't consent to it on a values level, they will not consent to keep to it. Understand that. So your money is spent getting the consent, not spent making the rule. That's very important to understand with teenagers. What we want to do is we want to enroll them. Think about enrolling them in the values underneath the limit. All right. So in month 2, we're going to talk about culture. At this point, culture is largely raising your children, not you. And I'm so sorry to say that. It doesn't mean you're not important. It just means they are very attuned outward. They want to know what their friends think. They want to know what their community thinks. They want to know what YouTube thinks. Okay. They are largely influenced, and I don't mean exclusively, and I don't mean they don't care about your values, but they deeply care about lots of other people's values. Okay. And you must understand this. This can't be negative for you, or they will be almost, think of it like almost in a position, almost in a position of a divorce, where there's two different parents that they really want to have a relationship with. And if it becomes adversarial, it becomes very confusing for the child. Does that make sense? So right now there's us, right? Whether that's one parent household, two parent household, whether that's a co-parenting divorce situation, it doesn't matter. They have a relationship with us, their parents. And then they also have a relationship with this world outside that is also co-parenting your kids with you at this stage. I want you to understand that. And I know that's an intense thing to say, but if you don't understand that, it's challenging. And just like we want to have the best co-parenting relationship, even with someone we might deeply disagree with, even with someone we don't want to spend our lives with, we still have to have a good co-parenting relationship with the culture that is raising our children. That is the best protective stance for your children and for you. Does that make sense, you guys? Give me a 1 in the chat if that makes sense. Give me a 2 in the chat if you're like, heck no. All right. So then we are going to be talking about their culture, which is dating and peers and passions and music and stress and sexuality and substances and screen and porn and slang. We have to stay relevant. So we're going to do 4 deep dive masterclasses for you on the following subjects: peers. We're going to be talking about inclusion, exclusion, how they can use good judgment. If, let's say, a peer is making a really poor choice, how are they going to still stay aligned with their peer and yet differentiate their behavior and their actions and choices? We're going to be talking about how to date honorably, how to break up honorably. We're going to be talking about why peers can be actually a super positive influence in your kids' lives, and also what to do about it when they aren't. The second week in month 2, we're going to be talking about academics and passions and hobbies and identities and why these are so protective for your kids. So we're going to help them connect to their strengths and their skills and talk about how to do that if they're not. We'll talk about helping them build healthy stress responses to schoolwork and demands, and how to hold steady. How you can hold steady and how they can hold a little bit steady as they are switching identities at a dizzying pace. Then in month 2, week 3, we're going to be talking about screens and porn. We're going to talk about where this is where culture is truly, really like raising your kids, how to know what's too much, how to decide what the family values are, but how to let them still stay connected, how to help them build communities that aren't exclusively based on that, how to understand why so many of them feel like they really need it, how to work with them to protect them from the darker sides of social media, some of which include buying pills. And some of those pills are not because your kids are wanting to actually like do naughty things. Some kids are buying pills because they want to get better at schoolwork and they're told it's going to keep them up or help them focus. So it's really helpful to understand all of this. We want to help them stay away from social media that induces self-harm, promotes eating disorders, introduces them to porn, and also even can get them caught up in sex trafficking. Okay, so these are things that actually you need to understand are happening on social media. That doesn't mean all social media is bad, but we want to help our kids understand this world. Now, what you share with them at what age, we'll talk about that, but it's important for you to understand you may not know everything that's happening there. And I think you want to. Okay, we're going to talk about substances in our last week of month 2. Some of your kids are going to experiment, and some of your kids aren't. All right. And we want to know everything about it, from alcopops to vaping to outright addiction. We're going to talk about how to get their head in the game so they can keep their bodies safe. And we want to share with you how to make peace also with your own journey, because some of you may have histories there. How do you deal with that? Right? And how to also, if you're not going to, or they're not going to choose abstinence, how do you do harm reduction? Okay. Then in month 3, we're going to be going into the word choice. What does it mean, choice? So this is their season of choice. As we said, now they are the one choosing the food, the friends, the words, the music, their career track, all for themselves. That doesn't mean we don't have a say, but it is their choice. All right. So we want to help them think well. That's our job at this point. Help you think well so you choose well, and be able to get them to want you there. All right. So we also need to understand very clearly what our choices are and what our choices aren't. So what fights should you not be having, and what fights should you not be having? Okay. That's really important. And sometimes you won't be able to choose entirely what you can do. Like, so I'm going to give you an example with my older son, who he's my, I always say, like my Alex Keaton from Family Ties. He is our like totally different kid. Okay. He is a massive, risky guy. He's actually in his own way kind of cautious, but he really like rolls differently. He's a kid who's been interested in tattoos for years and motorcycling and all sorts of dirt biking and all sorts of stuff that I'm just like, really? Like, where does this come from? I don't even know what to do. And over the years, I've learned to really embrace my son's desires. They are like in him. They're like, as James Hillman says, the psychologist, like I talk about, like the child is like, It's like they're an acorn and their tree is all already encoded in them, and then they just grow into that tree. And I do firmly believe that our children come to us as they are. Yes. And there is nurture, but there is also nature. And so, those of you who with more than one child, you can see like there's multiple children growing in the same home. And honestly, you don't have that much say over who they're becoming in some ways, of who they are, what their nature is. And so, for my older son, a lot of my journey has been like, okay, wow, that's different. Okay, cool, let's do it. And so, I have been learning how to embrace his love of bikes. So my husband is a big cyclist, and he moved from road cycling to mountain biking. My son started with mountain biking, moved into dirt biking, now wants to do motorcycling, which my husband did as well when he was younger. So maybe it's a little genetic. All right. So anyway, so my older son wants to get a motorcycle. I have spent years saying no. No, absolutely not. No way. No, 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 no. Guess what I'm saying this year? Yes. And you know why? Because he is 17 and he has wanted this for so many years, and he is obsessed with it, and he has learned everything, and he has shown a tremendous amount of perseverance and joy and passion and knowledge. And I finally asked myself in my heart, if my son were wanting to ski or horseback ride or mountain climb, like I don't have the same associations as I do with a motorcycle. I probably would have said yes. But if I'm statistically looking at the danger, it's extremely equivalent. So this is my own bias, and it's not fair. I started going around and talking to motorcycle people. And I was like, oh, yeah, every time I'd meet them, I'm like, I get it. You guys are totally my son's people. I get it. And I realized this is an amazing way for me to connect with my son over the years to come. I also realized at the age of 17, I can either help him get his first motorcycle, which means I also have a say in the kind of gear he's getting, which also means I have a say in the kind of training he's going to have to do. And I can step ladder him into as much safety as possible, while also making sure I'm very present in how he's building his journey onto this. If I wait till he's 18 and I say, no, 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 when he's 18, he's already got a job, he's already got the money for it. He can just go and do it how he wants to do it, which is not going to be as protective for him. So I need to protect his 25-year-old from his current 17-year-old. And my best way of doing that is actually saying yes, not no. And so being able to think through those decisions in a calculated manner that also preserves the relationship and also helps your child. So again, harm reduction in this instance, right? But also passion protective. Yes. So it's really important. And I'm not suggesting that all your kids get on motorcycles. And if my kid wanted to be a botanist, maybe that would be awesome and much more calming for me. But it's really cool what he wants to do. And I'm embracing that. And I understand the values in it. And it's brought us absolutely closer together. And my also saying yes to that is also what helped him finally say no to energy drinks. And for those of you who don't know, my son has a heart condition. So that is a major, major, major win. All right. So just so you understand, there are many different variables. All of our families are going to have different variables, different decisions. Some families are comfortable with their children experimenting with drugs. Some families are not. So every family gets to make your own choice, but I want to help you make very calculated decisions about what I want my family to look like. If I want to raise a family with no social media, if I want to raise a family with absolute abstinence, if I want to raise a family with sexual abstinence, if I want to raise a family who does go on motorcycle trips, you get to decide. There's no one way to do this, but the decisions you make have to be consensual and full of choice, because the biggest choice that exists is that over the years, these are the years your children are going to choose this relationship or not. Okay. So I want you to understand that that is the biggest choice your kids are going to be making. All right. That up until the age of about 12, it's not really a choice. They need you. They need you for food and shelter and all of the things. Now, obviously, they still need you for food and shelter from 12 to 18, but the reality is they can sleep at a friend's house a lot of time. They can get jobs and buy food, and they can sit there and still be in your home and become absolutely miserable and make your life very difficult. Because if they are not choosing the relationship at this point, it's going to make it painful for both parties. They understand they're no longer dependent on you for their emotional well-being. Does that make sense? Now, that's not totally true. They are dependent on you for their emotional well-being, but that's not what they understand it to be. So you want to, in order to stay protective for them, you need to have them want to keep hiring you throughout these years. Does this make sense? That's the most crucial choice. So to help you do that, we are also going to be giving you, we have a whole masterclass with a series of techniques that you can use when you do find yourself in a détente with them. Now, I promised you one big mind flip to take with you, which is we always think, I think as parents, that we only have a certain amount of years left. We've only got our kids for 18 years and, under our house. And like you see those little boxes of like, this is how much time you have left with your kids, if you've ever seen that visual. And it seems kind of terrifying, like it's dwindling. But I want to tell you something. You had children to become adults, okay? They are going to be adults far longer, please God, than they were children. And you are going to have a longer relationship with them going forward for many more years. This is not just the end of an era. This is the beginning of the whole next phase of your life with them. And what you do in these years sets the tenor for how close and connected that will be. So this is an investment, not just in these years, but in all of the years to come. All right. And I want you to understand that so that, again, this doesn't have to feel so sad. It's actually incredibly joyful. All right. So, my friends, that's it. We've created this course for you. It is 12 weeks to a better relationship with your teen. We're going to be doing 12 weekly master classes on all of these individual subjects. Each one is a deep dive so that you don't have to question yourself anymore. You've got best practices. You know how you want to roll with that. You have clear direction. We also have 12 weekly live coaching calls so that you can feel the community. You're not alone. You're going to get answers to things you don't even know you need yet because somebody else is asking it. You're not there yet, or your kid's not dealing with that yet, but you learn it now so that later on, when you are suddenly in that moment, you're like, I know exactly what to do, because sometimes you don't have time to go learn, right? You got to answer now, or something's going down right now. So the more knowledge you get, the better. I want to open up to questions. Sarah says, does each individual parent take a different role at this age? Do kids need moms and dads, whatever that looks like in mixed couples, differently? Will the course cover any of that? Absolutely. What a great question. Yes. The kids often pick the other parent who was not the nurturing parent in the younger years. Because as they shift their identity into the grown-up, they often choose the other parent because that feels like not the little kid parent. Okay. Now, you can also shift yourself, because for some of us, we're single parents, or, our child doesn't have an additional parent. So you can also shift your own energy to help encompass that and move into that new role. And you can also engage members of the community. And we do talk about that in the course. That is definitely a piece of the course that we go into. Melissa says, also would love it if you can talk about how to handle the younger sibs FOMO when the teen gets to, for example, stay up later, have that coffee cake talk at midnight, get more video game time when it's social with friends. Absolutely. And that is an important piece of development for everybody, is to understand that you are meeting each child developmentally appropriately. And it's really important for both kids that you hold that difference. So we will talk about that as well. Sarah says, for little kids, there's been this theme of connection and using it as a marker of where the relationship is. Is there an equivalent for teenagers given that there's more distance? Absolutely. We have an entire masterclass on how to connect with your teen. And all like we also have a whole worksheet of specific phrases that open them up and shut them down, specifically for teens, and lots of different ideas for you for how to create those connection points because they absolutely still are there. There's absolutely ways to connect with your kids. It's going to look different than what it looked like, for sure. Brenna says, I'm muddling with whether it's better to take the class before we're completely in the thick of it, or if I will get more mileage out of it with a ton of foresight that also might get forgotten. Menopause brain. By the way, that is another thing we're going to be dealing with is many of us are in menopause during this time. That is a reality. And one of the things we need to work on is our self-care. So that is another subject that we will be touching on in the course of this because our journey during this time is equally important. Sarah says also how to protect the younger sibling from topics too mature for them that the teenager is going through. Yes, that's a absolutely amazing question. And these are the kinds of things that we will deal with on the group coaching for sure. This is you get to work out all the questions that come up for you. Dana says, hope you can address when teens fall behind. They don't follow the developmental stages that the majority do. Huge piece of what we're going to be addressing. So that is definitely very much something that happens for teens, right? So sometimes it's anxiety. I mean, it's almost always anxiety related. Sometimes it's neurodivergences that aren't being properly supported. So, absolutely, we would be getting into that and seeing why and helping you on a very private and personal level figure out what you can do. Melissa says, and the masterclass part of the call is not discussion based, right? So we could be doing something else, walking the dog while in that part of the call. Absolutely. It'll be kind of like what we did today, where I'm teaching you a bunch of things, but really going deep dive into a subject. Anybody else got any questions? If not, we'll move into takeaways. All right. What are you taking with you from today's conversation? So, Michelle, you want to tell us what you're taking with you?
I'm really going to focus on consent. I've had that in my mind. I think since, yeah, that just seems that really hits for me that my daughter's almost 17. And so we've been doing this for a while. And I think that's just such a good tweak that really makes a big difference. When I
Absolutely.
have that at the forefront of my mind. So thank you for that reminder.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Caroline.
I think it's really that mind flip that you gave that it's not like the end is coming and then that's it. And I got a little emotional listening to you talk about that just because my son, like, I realize I'm like, he has 2 years left of high school after this year. And this year he's doing his last season of lacrosse, which he's been doing for years. And it's trying to see, yeah, flip it to think like, but we're still building a relationship forever. Right. And it's not, yeah. Anyway.
Yes. And these are some of the most important years because, again, these are the years where their brain is pruning. And if they don't use it, they lose it. And so these are the years we specifically don't want to get coded out of their brain. This is a highly neuroplastic stage. So the more you can encode that sense of relationship and like, I get you and I like you and I like where you are and I'm skilled for what you need, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
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 Jenny.
I just am like feeling such relief, just feeling that relief of being in it together, being in that sense of community. And Abigail, the sense of like exhale around being part of a cohort with you and having your leadership. But I would say my takeaway, I really found it such a cool way to think about is co-parenting, like that we're a parent and that we're co-parenting with the world. And what is that? Yeah, how do we be strong, productive, kind, respectful co-parents? It's really powerful.
I love that. What a great takeaway. Katie, are you able to hop on?
Just like mind flipping, like, oh my gosh, this can be a really exciting, beautiful time for all of us to connect. I think just opening a softness around, these next years.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
I love it. And Sarah says, I can't get on the video, but here's my takeaway. This is where we're building the longer relationship through adulthood. I also love the idea of these being years of teaching them to curate themselves and for themselves. That's great. Yes, great takeaway, Sarah. Dana says it's a different stage and we need to communicate with them differently. And Brenna says the consent part also is a good lightning bolt. Thank you. And Melissa says, I love the idea of seeing the teenagers as exciting, not sad, because I've been leading up to it feeling sad about them not being little anymore.
Hi. Yeah, there's so much, especially on social media, all these videos of like your last moment of doing XYZ with your child. And it's always making me feel like it's almost over. But it's nice to think about it in a different way, that it's not almost over, even when they do graduate high school and go off to college. But I'm also excited to just be a part of the community again, because that was really fun in TTP to have that group to meet with once a week and share our stories.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited you're going to be joining us, and so much love to you all. Thank you for spending this hour with me here, and lots of love. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.